Let's jump into it. So this is a situation with GameStop and the hedge funds and what's happening right now. To start off with, let's get a basis understanding of what shorting is in the good ways and the bad ways. So let's do it. This is how shorting works when you win and when you lose. So let's say party one currently owns one share of GameStop that's currently valued at $10. Party two takes this share from party one and asks to borrow it. Party two takes it. Party two still owes party one this GameStop. It's like when your friend borrows a pencil. Party two then gives it to party three, but they sell it for $10. So in this case, they sort it for the value that it is, right? And they make $10. So they're holding on to 10 USD right now. If the value of GameStop decreases, let's say it goes from $10 down to $1, party two makes a profit of $9. Well, this is because they only owe party one share of GameStop. So they just got to give them $1. And when you deduct 10 from 1, you get $9. So that's what happens when you win a short. Now, let's say if you lose a short. Well, if you lose a short, then what ends up happening is, let's say the value of GameStop increases. It goes from $10 up to $100. Well, if that's the case, then party two takes a loss of $90 because they owe them one share of GameStop, which costs $100 now. And if you deduct the initial $10 they got when they sold it, they're left with a $90 loss. And thus this individual also gains back their share of GameStop, which is also valued at $100. So that's how shorting works when you win or when you lose. So Melvin Capital, which is the hedge fund, made a extremely risky short bet. So whenever you short, it's a high risk, right? Because the potential to lose is it's infinity, right? But to gain, it's a limited amount. So they were constantly shorting GameStop. They did that from essentially starting at a valuation when GameStop was about like $24 and then kept on driving it down. They got super greedy. The percentage of short that they did was 134% of its value, of GameStop's value. That's how greedy they got. And what ended up happening is that a bunch of people online looked at public information that you can find just by simply Googling and researching that this was happening. I mean, you can look at FinViz right now, and I'll link it down in the resources, and you can see the data. You can see all the companies at the percentage they're being shorted by. And no one in their right mind would do it by 134%, unless you're greedy as... That's exactly what happened. So Melvin Capital got beat at their own game. People realized that this was happening. So one of the first indicators that this happened was back in 2019 when Scion Capital, which was the hedge fund that is actually founded by Michael Burry, who was the one who indicated the housing market back in 2005 and predicting it that was going to happen in 2007, 2008 area. He actually bought a large percentage of GameStop and was saying, buy back your stock because something isn't adding up. And so that is the problem, right? That was the first time it got caught. Like this is, and back then it was like 120% hedge or 120% short. So that was what was happening. So people started trickling in and noticing that this was happening. So early on, people got it at $2 and $20 and etc. And then eventually the news got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that's what was shared on Wallstreet bets and so on and so forth. And now we are here today. What's happening now is that when you have people buying a stock, the value of that stock increases. And the reason that's happening is because there's only a finite volume of shares that a company may have. And so whenever people buy that share, the value increases because the shares are getting smaller and smaller, right? For example, if I had one phone and there's 10 people in the room and everybody wants to buy a phone, the value of this phone is really high. But if I had 10 phones and 10 people, then the value of the phone is going to be relatively low because of that, for market and demand reasons, right? So when people noticed that this hedge fund was betting 134% that GameStop was going to fail, everyone rallied in. Everybody wanted to buy GameStop. Of course you do, because there's all these people that are saying it's going to fail. And what ends up happening is the hedge fund has to pay out because they borrowed all of these shares, right? So they have to make up the difference. And now what's happening is that they're in the hole by billions of dollars. And so what happens? Well, Citadel, another hedge fund, essentially gives a bailout to Melvin Capital. And Melvin Capital doubles down again. So it's like, what? So obviously people are like, all right, let's keep on going. Let's keep on buying these shares and holding it and not selling. And now you get to the point where Melvin Capital loses about 15-30% of its portfolio in value because of this. And thus they're screwed. And so what happens then after that, right? Well, essentially they would go bankrupt and then they can't pay it off. And the banks that back up that hedge fund will then have to pay out that's left, right? It just ruins that company and so on and so forth. Just like what would happen to you, a normal person. If you take a loan and you can't pay it back, if you buy something with a loan and you can't pay it off, what happens? The bank comes in and takes it from you. But in this case, when the hedge fund has to pay up and when the banks have to pay up, they don't. Instead, they change the rules of the game. And how do they do that? Well, this is what they do. The hedge funds essentially talk to the brokerages. So the brokerages are the people who allow you to buy stocks. They're the gatekeepers. They're the ones who say, you have to go through us if you want to buy shares, right? So apps like Robinhood, apps like Webull, and so many others, right? They're the ones that you go through to buy. Now, the majority of retail investors nowadays use an app called either Robinhood or Webull. Both are very, very popular. So that's what all these trades have been happening. What the hedge funds essentially did is told the brokerage companies, hey, don't allow the people to buy the shares, but allow them to sell it. So if you're a regular person and you see this, and we're not doing insider trading because we're not all in one room, unlike the hedge funds that definitely do insider trading, right? Us, the retail investors, we sell because we can't buy it anymore, and thus causes the value of the stock to go down and down and down, allowing the hedge funds to go in and then buy up those shares once again and securing their safety. That's why this is bullshit. Because on a free market, you're allowed to buy and sell whenever you would like during market hours, of course. And that's not the case. The game isn't made for the retail investors. It's not made. The free market and capitalism, it wasn't made for us. It was made for the billionaires. And that's what's frustrating. It's always socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. And that's why you should be mad.